Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the meeting of the Development Committee. Before I go any further, can you all hear me? It is a new microphone, so obviously we've got to get used to them. Can you hear me now? Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the meeting of the Development Committee. There are no fire drills planned for this evening. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, please leave the building via the nearest exit and make your way to the assembly point located in the market car park adjacent to the Civic Suite building. Please be reminded to switch off your mobile phone and turn any other electronic devices being used to silent. Please note the meeting will be live streamed where the proceedings are capable of repeated viewing. I would like to make members aware that while the presentation by officers is being shown, this will be the image that will be seen by the public on the live stream. Please ensure your microphone is switched on when speaking and you speak clearly into the microphone. If you are seated in the public area of the chamber, it is likely that your image will be captured by the recording cameras and result in your images becoming part of the broadcast. If members, for any reason, not present for the whole debate on an item, you should consider and seek advice as necessary on whether it would be appropriate for you to vote on that item. Item 1. Apologies for absences and substitutes. Members, apologies received from Councillor Sarah Jane Page, substituted by Councillor Cross. Apologies from Councillor P. Shaw, substitute Councillor Steptoe. Apologies from Councillor Mrs. V. Wilson and Councillor G. Myers. Item 2, none members attending, Councillor Williams, Councillor Marriott, Councillor FD. Item 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of October 2024. Are the minutes agreed? Those minutes are agreed. Item 4, to receive declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Steptoe.
Thank you, Chairman. With regards to item 5, I'm ward councillor. With regards to item 5 and 6, they both fall in my county division.
Thank you, Councillor Steptoe. Councillor Mrs. Shaw.
Thank you, Chairman. Non-pecuniary interest. I'm an Essex County Councillor. Thank you. For highways.
Thank you. Item 5. Items referred from the weekly list. There is one item referred from the weekly list, 5124/00272 full, land adjacent to 9 College Gardens, Rochford. Mike Stranks will present the report.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is to a site between a detached bungalow at number 32 Roachway and an adjoining house at number 9 College Gardens. All right, I'll go again. This application is to a site between a detached bungalow at number 32 Roachway that hopefully the cursor can just highlight. When we get there, you go. That's it. The bungalow's to the left. That's it. That's number 32 Roachway, and a detached house at number 9 College Gardens on the other side. 9 College Gardens is a modern house being part of...
Mike, 1 second, please. Unfortunately, you're not being able to be heard. If you can try and bring the mic closer to you. One second, please, Mr. Stranks. Thank you. Please carry on.
Thank you, Chair. This application is to a site between the detached bungalow at 32 Roach Way and 9 College Gardens, which is a modern house as part of the redevelopment of what members remember of the former Roach Way Adult College. If we can first look at the allocations plan 1A, please. Members will see that actually the site technically is in the green belt. If Katie can highlight between, there you go. You'll see to the left of the cursor is the 32 Roach Way, couple of bungalows that were built on the site of the former ambulance station. You'll see the Roach Way Adult Education Centre, former secondary school before the war, that was redeveloped because it's in the green belt, but brownfield or previously developed land. So a development came along that members approved, and what we're dealing with is a residue site. Before we leave that image, if we could scroll down to the aerial photograph below and just sort of point it out as it is today, please. You might need to zoom in a touch. But what members will see is still a vacant site for the care home to the far right of the screen. If we could lower it down a bit, that's it, cross a bit more. There you go. And you'll see like that bold stripe in the plot itself. This was the former access to the what was then Disability Essex. It's now Trust Links building at the south west to your screen. There you go. That large building there had an access across their site and over the site that's before you tonight, out onto the Roach Way car park, which has now got houses on it. When the housing was redeveloped next door that you now see, they now obtain access off the cul-de-sac that serves our site also. So the access to the former education facility is no longer required and now forms this site. If we could see the neighbouring football car park layout plan, that gives members a better context in two-dimension form. You'll see the former college building, plus you'll see the access, hopefully, that forms the site up a little. That's it in that area there. So what we're left with is sort of a leftover piece of land between more recent developments. It's worth noting too on this image that the adjoining bungalow number 32 Roach Way has a south-facing garden, yet you'll see the adjoining development from College Gardens has a south-facing front aspect but a rear garden. And if we jump to the proposed layout plan, you'll see that the arrangement here shows access off the cul-de-sac, the new cul-de-sac serving the new housing, with parking you'll see to the front, but you'll see that the front garden parking area to the new dwelling is adjoining the rear garden to the existing bungalow, and then the rear garden to the new dwelling adjoins the front forecourt area to the existing bungalow. Otherwise, the proposed dwelling is in the same alignment as number 9 College Gardens next door. If we could jump to the street scene plan number 4, please. Okay. This just should show you some the design of the neighbouring dwellings. It'll become clearer in a moment why we're showing you these. And if we could then jump to plan 5 that shows a balcony detail. You'll see unusually the dwellings here have a 2-storey flat-roofed side element with a small balcony over the top of the garage, which is a feature to all this group of housing. If we can see plan 6, please, which I think shows it just in a little bit of detail. This is to the houses that back onto the site. So this is their front view. The site you're looking at tonight is opposing at the back of these properties. If we could jump to 7 back to back, please. That shows you a view across the site. This is the vacant plot that you're looking at. You've got the new housing that's being built to your right and behind the site. And note the rather tall apexes with the windows in each gable end. And you'll see the bungalow next door with their side window below the television mast on the end corner. If we could look at the elevations of the dwelling proposed, hopefully members will see, given the photographs of the new development in College Gardens, you'll see that the architect has taken his design cues from that form, and you'll see there's the flat-roofed element with the balcony over the front, in the front elevations, and you'll see it on the side as well, and you'll see the tall apex roof with the window in the gable end. The architect, they're not necessarily identical, but they're a very close match to the buildings that were in the College Gardens development. If we go back to the block plan, please, members will see that the siting position with the rear wall of the dwelling proposed is in general alignment to the rear wall of the dwellings in College Gardens. But you'll see on the opposite side of the plan, the bungalow there, the front wall of that is some way down the garden to the proposed dwelling. The window that will become an issue in the next images is roughly where the cursor is that you see on the screen before you now. And if we could jump to those plans, please. Sorry, the photographs. You should see that this is one of the views. We have a handful of views taken from the nearby window. Depending where you stand in the window, you would see beyond, across the fence line to the adjoining properties. And if we can quickly just jump to the next image, you'll see as you turn through, they're in alignment with those dwellings you see out of the window would be the rear wall of the dwelling proposed. And then in the last image, you see a more southerly looking out of the window. You'd see that would be blocked. You might have to rotate it. There you go. If you can you rotate on that screen? That's it. Can you do the next one? And is there another? That's the one. That view would be more or less obscured by the presence of the dwelling, depending how you look through the window. So you'll see from the officer's report that as I said, the design has been taken from the queue of the existing development. You can go back to the block plan while I go through this, please. The plot, you'll see from the report, there's been some criticism that it's inadequate. Where there's the neck of the site onto the cul-de-sac, it is narrow, but in planning purposes, we measure where the building would be sited, where it would fit. And you'll see across the width of the plot there, they've got rather generous side spacings. Normally you're used to seeing the metre minimum, which is on that side where the cursor is now. But on the other side, it's larger. It's some 2.25 metres. And that is the width there, some 11.2 metres across, which is wider than the 9.2 that you would need for a detached dwelling. In terms of garden area, the officer report is in error. It refers to a 12-metre shortfall, when in actual fact there's a 6-metre shortfall, because when the officer calculated the garden area, they didn't include the patio area where you see the patio doors going out. So the shortfall is not as great as the report tells you. The space that you will see will be usable. It's a shape that somebody can make a garden of. It's not like you see with some flatted schemes where you've got pockets of garden area separated by car parking spaces and an amalgam of different spaces. This is one complete space. The site also is close to public open space in two locations. There's the playing field out the back of College Gardens, but there's also the Millview Meadows informal open space. And your guidance does say that where you adjoin open space, you can relax your standard. On the back-to-back distance, members will also see that there is a slight shortfall. We prefer to see 25 metres distance between the rear windows upstairs and the downstairs windows of houses backing onto the site. But the arrangement here is no different to what you see on the layout plan with the adjoining properties. So there is, say, 1.5 metre shortfall, but because it's common to the group of dwellings of which this would form part, officers felt it would be unreasonable purely on a mathematical dimension to resist the development. I think that brings me to the conclusion, Chairman. You'll see on the addendum there's a further letter of objection from the resident at 32 Roachway that's set out there before you. Whilst the recommendation is approval, there is just a couple of minor things. You'll see there's no actual condition 10, and officers would like the discretion to renumber the conditions so they follow a consecutive order. But I'm also asking, if members are minded to approve it, that we include a condition seeking approval of finished levels for the site. That could become a new or a missing condition 10. But subject to those changes, Chairman, the recommendation is approval for the subject to the conditions set out in the report.
Thank you, Mike. We have no public speakers for this item. Ward members will take priority. Roach South Ward, Councillor Marriott, Councillor Steptoe and Councillor Williams. Ask if any visiting members wish to speak. Councillor Marriott.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to read out the view of Trustlinks, who neighbours this development. Trustlinks do an incredible amount of important work, and they've helped a lot of residents who are suffering from mental health conditions, and they offer a haven for those people. So here's what they have to say. To whom it may concern, the proposed multi-storey development would directly overlook Trustlinks Rochford site, where members, including both children and adults, participate in therapeutic sessions, which includes gardening as part of their recovery. These individuals, many of whom are vulnerable, rely on the service for a safe and private environment that promotes well-being and emotional recovery. Granting planning permission for a property that overlooks this space could compromise their privacy, which could lead to feelings of exposure and anxiety, which may undermine the therapeutic benefits of the service. Protecting privacy and dignity of individuals assessing mental health support is crucial, and any development that threatens this should be reconsidered to prioritise the mental health and well-being of those assessing this local community resource. In addition to the well-being concerns, it is my understanding that the access to this property would be directly in front of our pedestrian access point. This is already an area without pavement. An additional point of access to navigate would pose increased risk for our members, many of whom are children or young people and or adults with physical or mental health concerns. Thank you very much for listening, and please, members, take into consideration the words of Trustlinks. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Marriott. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. I understand. Do you have some photographs that I asked to be shown? If I could see photograph 1, please. Thank you. Thank you, members. As Ward Councillor, I have serious concerns regarding this proposed development. My concerns are as follows. You will see that the only access to this site, vehicle or pedestrian, crosses the pedestrian access to the Trustlink site. This where children and vulnerable adults participate in activities in their garden that promotes their physical health and mental well-being. Please note that there is no footway but only direct access from the pedestrian gate to the roadway. This proposed development will directly overlook the Trustlink site along with the rear garden of number 32 Roachway from the first floor balcony of the proposed development, which will be immediately next door. Could we have picture 2, please? Thank you. This shows that the site, as it is at the moment, please note how close the proposed development will be to existing homes. The report states that only the room that will be affected is that of 32 Roachway, which has a side window, and that this room is not used often. That's item 23, page 4 in your report. I understand that this is at present a spare bedroom, but that may not always be the case. This development, by virtue of size, may severely impact on future use of this room to the detriment of the residents. If I could see picture 3, please. This shows the only entrance to the site. The fence will of course need to be removed, making for an unusual, difficult perhaps, vehicle or pedestrian access point to the proposed development as stated earlier. If I could have picture 4, please. Thank you, members. This picture shows the view from the west across the front of numbers 30 and 32. The proposed development, that's Roachway, sorry. The proposed development would have a rear garden immediately behind number 32's garage, As stated in report item 18, page 3, this is an unusual layout where adjacent properties are rear garden adjacent to front garden. Members, as previously a member of this committee and knowledge gained, I feel that this proposed development be wholly inappropriate for the site, location and street scene. Perhaps a two-floor smaller house that would transition between a 3-storey home and a bungalow would be far more appropriate. This site already smacks of overdevelopment. Adding another 3-storey property only perpetuates this. May I suggest that you members be minded, should you approve this application, for a site visit to make that absolutely clear. Thank you, members. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Would any committee members wish to speak on this? Councillor Stanley.
Point of order, Chair. You've got the ward councillor. Councillor Steptoe.
I did actually ask any ward councillors.
Chairman, I'll speak as a committee member rather than a ward councillor.
That's what I thought. Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to get back to the the picture that we had of the entrance to the property, it looks very much like you would have to cut across number 9's front garden. It's very, I don't know how wide that is from the point of view of driving across there. And I just wonder if that is that part of the highway, or is that going to be part of the driveway into the property? Whichever it is going to be would have to be made, the ground area would have to be supported in some form or other. And I just wonder if that's part and
Thank you, Councillor Stanley. Mr. Shranks.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I think this is best resolved looking at the layout plan when it comes up. You'll see that the applicant has control up to the points that they're showing, and you see that like square corner where the cursor is now. That would be the extent of the turning head. So that was my point earlier, that normally plots have perhaps a regular frontage, but where you get these end of street type arrangements where the road stops short, it's not uncommon to see a narrow access point on. Now, our information is that the applicant controls the area that they're showing, which is in the paved, in like the chevron area there. And no doubt it would be adoptable highway if it is yet adopted, because the site is not finished, where you see the square turning head. So in effect, the access point would sort of kiss the edge of the highway without any intervening land. But we don't see that that would be a problem in terms of the access point. It's wide enough to get one vehicle in, which is all they'd be required. They may get more than one width in there. But on completion out of the scheme, future adoption of the street, there would be a right to access up to the limits of the highway like there is in any other street. It's not essential that there is a pavement there, because you can access up to 5 dwellings on an arrangement like that, often adopted turning head, before you need to get away from shared surfaces. This would only be one dwelling, so it would be the movements from one household that would go through that point onto the adopted highway. Also, that the County Highway Authority has not objected to this arrangement.
Chairman, if I might ask, what is the dimension of the opening to that? Is it more than the width of a large car, not a mini? In actual fact, that's what I'm looking at, because I feel that it's going to drive across where it says proposed in 1 metre high fence panel. You could always cut that back and make the opening larger, but as it's on somebody else's property, then they can't do that, can they?
Chairman, I think the dimension is in the reports somewhere, but as a guide for members' eye, if you look at the other side of the screen to the cursor, there is a gap where that gate is. That's 2.25 metres wide. So if you then imagine that width coming down to where the cursor is now, a car parking space needs to be 2.9 wide under your modern standards. That's to open doors. So a vehicle in the past has gone through as little as 2.4 or 2.5 wide. So if you say that that sideway up at the top is getting close to the width required for the one vehicle, I wouldn't go by the images because they're architectural images that are just superimposed. We'd be lucky if they're to scale. But in terms of the physical width down where the cursor is, there's more than adequate for one vehicle to get into the site.
So it will be large enough for a vehicle to get in. That's all I'm asking. Not that. And my other question is that where the window is in the bungalow, they'll be looking at one blank wall in front of them. And where, in orientation, where is the east to west or west to east orientation of that property? Thank you. Only that would indicate whether you're blocking light out of the property. Thank you.
Mr. Franks.
Thank you, Chair. The window position, if Katie can hover on that at the moment, very usefully, the cursor is the north at the top, east at the side and south at the bottom, and west to the far side. So if you follow the points on that cursor, that gives you east that way across the plot towards the elevations that are shown also on this plan. North is down the garden and the properties that back onto the site, and south is the parking area to the front of the dwelling. So the sun would rise from across the plot, would journey round and set the other side, sort of southwest of that compass. So the sun would travel round the front of the site.
Councillor Stanley.
Thank you. So, as you've said, that side window will be really in darkness because of as the sun moves round on the plot, by the time it gets to the right-hand corner of the property, that property, the bungalow, will be in darkness as the sun won't be able to give daylight through that light.
Thank you, Councillor Stanley. Mr. Franks.
And I just wondered if...
Thank you, Councillor Stanley.
Chairman, I think darkness is a strong word to use in this case. What you have is, I took some trouble with the photographs that I showed you earlier, that if you look at the position of the rear wall, if Katie can take the cursor over to that, the rear wall there is roughly the position of the window. The window isn't plotted, unfortunately, on this image, but from what officers have measured out, and you saw photographs taken by the case officer from the bedroom, and you could line up through the window framing the alignment of the adjoining properties, because you'll see on the other side, look, that there's the position of number 9 is shown. So you carry the run of back wall of the housing across onto this plot. It gives you a view that I think we carefully explained, that depending when you're looking out of that window, sort of to the sort of northeast-ish, the building wouldn't be in the way. Straight out you would see the back wall corner, and then if you turned yourself southwards, yes, the view would be obliterated. But this is not unlike the cases where you get perhaps the other side where number 9 is, where you just get the minimal gap. This has got a wider, to double your side isolation distances between. Now that will allow some light to get through to there. And then the window that it serves is currently a bedroom. I accept that people change it, but you're dealing with as things are now. It's not a principal living room like lounges, kitchens, dining rooms where people would spend a lot of time enjoying their home. Okay, unless they're unfortunate enough to be bedridden, which we can't deal with. That's too extreme. So taking the usage of the window, taking the relationship to the adjoining built form, which doesn't completely obscure that window, then officers felt that the amount of light that would still be received to that window is reasonable. It's a subjective consideration. Members may feel otherwise, but it's not, I would say, totally. If that building was like twice its depth, and literally when you draw your curtains, all you see is a blank wall 2 metres away, I think I'd be with members in that. But you will get some of the amenity you currently get from that window. It's not going to be totally lost. It will be affected. But what members have to determine, I think, is that effect so severe that it makes you go a different way to the way the officers have recommended. We've had a look at that. And And we think when you weigh this up and the fact that it's a bedroom, that the effect isn't so severe as to justify refusal.
Thank you, Mr. Franks. Thank you, Councillor Stanley.
Thank you.
Councillor Steptoe. Just to check, you are speaking as a member.
A committee member, correct. Thank you, Chairman. I've got a number of points of clarification and a few concerns I want to raise, but I'm just going to pick up on Councillor Stanley's point there. Where the cursor currently sits, that wall is a garage wall and is slightly lower level. The next wall along, going to the right, is the two-storey wall. So as that picture is orientated north to the top, the sun rises in the east, to the right of the picture, so that window will be blocked right the way round. When the sun is in the south, it will still be blocked because it won't be, it'll be shining up the sideway, and there'll be no light coming when the sun is in the west. So yes, I do have a concern about the overshadowing of that particular window. One of the things that hasn't really been come out in this in the drawings and what I've seen here is the bungalow's rear garden is to the bottom left-hand corner of the picture there, where the scale is. That's it. Now that will be overlooked by the windows from the front of the building. Now, very often, if a rear window is overlooking other people's garden, we can put obscured glass in, but it would be unusual to do that for a front of the property. So I have a concern about that overlooking. It is their rear garden, it's been there quite some time. As already been mentioned by Councillor Williams, the way the building is designed, and overall I don't have a particular problem with the design, other than the fact that it is overpowering on the bungalow. There should have been a better stepping down between the two properties. They've put it in keeping with the property. When you look at the top right-hand picture there, it's in keeping with the property to the right. I don't disagree with that at all. But there's nothing in keeping with the bungalow. So I find that very concerning. Point of clarification, please. It was mentioned earlier on that this site is actually green belt. My understanding is, unless the site is removed from green belt, that is an issue. So perhaps we can have some clarification on whether that is the case. With regards to the entrance there, if at all possible, could I refer to Councillor Williams' photographs? The one, I think it was the first or second one. That's the one. Okay. Well, if you look at the green bush that is on the, that's it, on the right there. If you just go into the picture a little bit to that next fence post, that's it. That's roughly the angle that it will come across at. And where the gate is, the wooden gate, not the metal gate, that's the other part. Now, that's a very tight angle for vehicles, particularly if they're having to turn around in the property as well. But the question I've really got is the property that garden is currently the front of, was that garden part of the planning permission for that property? And does that affect the allowance that property now has in having the front garden allowance? So I do again have a great concern about that. Touched on the overlooking of the adjacent bungalow. That will have a big effect, particularly on the residents there. But also, as well, as you heard from the other ward councillor, Councillor Marriott, with regards to Truss Links. Truss Links gate is the metal gate that you see there. It is a very important unit. It does provide an awful lot of support for local people, and there will be overlooking there, and that will be something of an issue. So if there is a mind to actually pass this, I would like to see some form of mitigation to stop that overlooking for the Truss Links property, because there are other considerations to be taken into account. They're my main concerns at the moment, Chairman.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. People are talking.
Thank you, Councillor Constable. I had got that and I was just about to ask them. Councillors, please.
Yeah. So they're my main concerns, Chairman. If perhaps officers can clarify some of those points, but I'm personally not happy with the development of this site in the way it's currently presented.
Thank you, Councillor Stanley. Can I ask Councillor Shaw, is your...
Steptoe,
Sorry, Councillor Steptoe.
I'm better looking.
Councillor Shaw, can I ask you if you could ask your questions at the same time, and then possibly Councillor Franks can...
Yeah, thank you. Councillor, sorry, Mike Stranks, I've promoted him. Said Essex,
Councillor Steptoe, if you could turn you... Thank you.
said Essex Highways had no objections. I keep asking every time we had this, can we see the letter? It's a one-page A4 letter that Essex Highways sends out. Was there any conditions on the letter that they sent out to the council? I mean, the ward councillors get it. I don't get. My Councillor Steptoe will get it for his division. I will get it for mine. And it's a one-pager. And I think every member of this committee should see what Essex Highways says. And I keep asking about this. I've been since 2021, I've been asking if we can have it. And we never get it. And I just find it, if we've got conditions on there, which sometimes they have, what are they, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Mr. Franks, can you answer Councillor Steptoe's and then obviously follow on with Councillor Shaw?
In my mind, Chairman, I'd rather go backwards while it's fresh. So I'd start
No
with-
problems.
The highway comments are summarised. It's not the whole document in full because they put a load of footnotes. But if you look at paragraph 58 to the report on page 515, you'll see there are conditions. They've asked for cycling to be provided, that there be a travel information pack. That's where the bus tickets are provided, because when people move into their homes, it's a life-changing event. That's the right time, Highways feel, to capture them to change their transport habits. And then an area within the site for the curtilage, for the storage of building materials, so they don't tip up sand and bricks and things on the highway, causing obstruction. But I take the point, the full letter is not there because there's a number of advisory notes that they often include. If I go back to, if Katie could show me the layout, please. There was a concern about the overlooking of the adjoining bungalow. Sorry, one of the other layouts, I think Plan 3 might do it, the one with the football. That's good. Members will see that the site neighbouring next door is already somewhat overlooked. It will be increased by this proposal, but you'll see there's dwellings opposite where the cursor is now that have a commanding view into there. So there is already a presence of overlooking. It'd be members to weigh up whether this is so severe as a result of this proposal that they think that's just not enough. It's overstepped the mark. Officers don't think so. The comment was made about the front garden allowance. Your policies and guidance, although they talk about plot widths, that's to fit the building within the street, you have an allowance for a rear private amenity area, and it sometimes includes balconies. So there is no size requirement for amenity space to the front. There is for the rear, and we've mentioned that, but there isn't a size requirement that the front garden is a certain size to an existing property. The plot width, yes, but not the area of land at the front. The last point I think is worth ask clarification for was on Green Belt. And you'll see that this was reported last time and we had to defer it because the report hadn't looked at this issue. It was it was not reported to you because at the time I think the case officer didn't realise, because it doesn't look like your typical Greenbelt site. And it's a legacy, as I explained at the beginning of the presentation, that the Greenbelt boundary runs along the site of number 32. It still does because your planning policy hasn't changed. It was sort of drafted in the noughties, it got adopted in 2014, and is still currently in use, and you're working in another place on a review of that. So it's an old document that development and time has overtaken it. National government policy has said since you adopted that plan that you can redevelop sites that have an existing use or building, what some people refer to as brownfield, or what the government talks about is previously developed land. This building was previously developed. It didn't have to be vacant. As a result of that development that you see now on the screen of the 14 or so houses, there's a care home on the other side still yet to be built. It's left you a sort of an island of green belt between number 32 and the 14 houses. Now, for Greenbelt to have status, yes, it's Greenbelt, but it has to maintain a function of being providing openness. Yeah? Beyond this site, the sites are still open. You've got the playing field, you've got the farmland beyond. But this site does not contribute any more to Greenbelt openness. So there are very special circumstances set out in the addendum report that's been put to you that, yes, technically it's Greenbelt, but then the next step is to, well, what function does it perform in a green belt sense? And it now no longer provides any because of the surrounding development that's boxed it in. So hence why officers are saying to you, you can still approve this. Yes, it's green belt, but this is an exception. There's a very special circumstance that it's been surrounded by more recent development. That means it being in the green belt in planning terms is a nonsense. It might be green belt on paper, but it serves no practical green belt function because of the development that's taken place. I think, Chairman, that covers all I was asked.
Councillor Steptoe.
Thank you, Chairman. I will come back on the Greenbelt issue. The building where Trustlinks is, that's the larger building in the top, in the bottom left corner there, that again is Greenbelt. It's only become an island because somebody has actually fenced it off. So I'm sorry, I don't accept the argument that it is not a functional piece of Greenbelt. It could very easily be if it was extended as just ordinary gardens, for example. So I don't accept that as an argument, I'm sorry to say.
Thank you, Councillor Steptoe. Can I just clarify something, please? As ward councillors, Councillor Steptoe in particular, you said you're not opposed to the building on there, but just the type of building on there.
No, I think you've misunderstood me, Chairman. I'm not opposed to the look of the building. What I'm opposed to is the fact that the building is overpowering over the bungalow and there's no step down between the existing property to the right of it, stepping it down towards the bungalow. They followed the design of the building to the right, but they haven't taken into account the building to the left and in effect ignored.
Thank you for that. If you wouldn't mind turning your mic off. The second bit is regarding the trust links. What was the concern in respect to the access to trust links or overviewing?
Yes, Chairman, I have a concern about the overlooking because this is the front of the property. So if it is a mind to be passed, I would like to say some form of condition mitigating that where the building fronts across the Trust Links property, that some form of mitigation is to stop the overlooking of the Trust Links property there. Somebody mentioned the property to the side. If I remember correctly, they've got something like a 6-foot standard 6-foot fence, so there isn't quite so much overlooking on the other property that was to the side that somebody showed earlier on, lower down on the drawing.
Thank you, Councillor Steptoe. Mr. Stranks, regarding the scene of the buildings to the left and building to the right, material planning matters, or?
I think it's subjective. You've got to think that the bungalows as they were built, they aspect, albeit down a private drive, onto Roachway, and they were of their time. This architect has taken his cues from where the site will get access, which is College Gardens. So it's in members that have got to weigh up the impacts of how they see it should be. I take the point of somebody saying, well, there should be some kind of step-down arrangement, but make the design probably a bit more unique and standalone as opposed to belonging to the adjoining 14. It's subjective. There's not a requirement that they do that, but you're trying to perhaps redesign it, but the architect have to go away. I think members have got to make a decision as to whether this is acceptable. It's not an easy decision, that's why it's here. But is it so bad that it should be refused? Officers are saying, when you look at the design and the principles that are taken, that's not the case. So a defence of that would be difficult. But that would be for members to deal with, should it be refused and should it go to appeal. There is the loss of light to the window issue, which I think is a main concern, but we've gone through that. It's a bedroom. In officers' view, the window will not be so obscured by development that it would be
Can I
intolerable
just
the other side.
stop you on that point so you can actually have a look? In your further representation, they're actually saying that they're going to be using that room as a dining room, not a bedroom.
Anybody could change the internal rooms around, but at the moment, that's how it is. So who knows if people moved away and different people moved in and kept it from a bedroom. At the moment, it is a bedroom. But even so, officers have looked at that with some care to see, well, what will be the impacts, and with the photographs that we hopefully showed you to help you in the decision that you've got to make.
Thank you, Mr. Stranks. Councillor Stanley.
Thank you,
Sorry,
Chairman.
Councillor Eves.
Oh,
Do apologise, Councillor Stanley.
thank you, Chair. I think there's an interesting point here that has been touched on in particular by Councillor Williams and Councillor Steptoe. In the overlooking from the balcony, one of the things you have to realise on this application is that the balcony is south-facing, so the likelihood of it being used is high. The other balcony that has actually been noted as overlooking the garden of the bungalow is north-facing, and I would suggest that that's unlikely to be used much. I do go along with Councillor Williams' point of actually it would be very useful if members could actually have a site visit. Reason being why is that when you look at the original design of the houses that are actually adjacent, all of those are looking out onto the frontages of the houses that are built of that same design. It strikes me that it would be much more acceptable if, as Councillor Steptoe has actually suggested, that it was a step-down design. There are all sorts of issues of overlooking here. I would say there's a palpable concern of overlooking the Truss Links area. They are vulnerable people there. They don't necessarily have to see anything going on, but they just see people looking at them, and it will not do their mental health any good. Now, I know we can't turn that down on planning issues, but when it comes to the overlooking, I think it's actually a little bit more serious than we're being told at the moment because of the aspect of it, and it is right next door to the garden. And I would suggest, with members' agreement, that we actually defer for a site visit.
I'll come back to you in a minute, Councillor Stanley. Can I just clarify that? Councillor Eves, thank you for that. I would imagine that the large majority of members and ward councillors have actually seen the property around there. I'm looking at that in respect to people. So regarding a site visit, I think the majority of people actually in the room would have already seen where the property is on that.
Sorry, Chair, if I may, if that is the case, it would be interesting to have a straw poll of actually who has actually seen it.
That's where I was actually going. Could I just have a quick show of hands for those who have actually seen the site?
Can I just mention that I think a lot of our members here will have visited Truss Links on many occasions, but they will not have actually, when they've been there, not taken into account that particular piece of plot of land. It's something that they drive into Truss Links and then walk up to the building. So I would like to suggest that I second Councillor Eves' suggestion of a site visit.
Thank you, Councillor Steptoe. I'll come back to that. Councillor Stanley.
Could I just ask the question that where the vehicles will be parked, the exhaust, I would imagine, would be in somebody's back in the, was it number 32 back garden? And I think that can be sort of toxic stuff going into the back garden when vehicles are parked there. Plus the fact on page 5.1.14, the flood risk, it's been noted that there is a flood risk on that site. And I just wondered just exactly what equipment has been installed to prevent other properties getting flooded from that area.
Thank you, Councillor Stanley. I think we could answer those questions if we revert back to Councillor Eves' request for a site visit. If you could bear with me a second, please. So can I just clarify, Councillor Eves, are you putting a motion forward to defer the for a site visit?
Yes, Chair.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Steptoe. Can I have a show of hands for? That's unanimous. I will defer that application and we will notify you in respect of a site visit in due course. Thank you, members. Councillor Stanley.
Chairman, could I have that noted about the exhaust from the vehicles and the flood risk, please?
This is recorded, so it will be noted. Members, item 6, 23-00569 out, land south of Sandy Crescent, Star Lane, Great Wakering. Mike Stranks will present the report. One second, please, Mr. Stranks, if you can let the members of the public leave. Thank you for attending. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Chairman. This application was deferred at the meeting of the 26th of September to seek clarification of a number of matters that were raised. The addendum report and Appendix 1 to the report set out extensive detail as to why the allocation for further industrial land is required. But in summary, your policies ED3 and ED4 look at the employment needs across time. There was an identification of 4 sites: Stanbridge Mills, Raworth Industrial Estate, Neldon Way Foundry and Hockley, and this site in Star Lane, or the industrial site in Star Lane, that were envisaged to be sort of tired, lacking investment sites that would probably be at some stage redeveloped. And part of the allocation was to, in event of those sites being redeveloped, to replace it. So the point is made, but you'll see from the evidence we now have with the emerging local plan that as a result of more recent surveys and looking at the sites that are in existence and the full occupancy rate of sites in Wakering and nearby, that there is remaining a need for industrial development. Now, the plan that you have, your adopted allocations plan, has gone through public scrutiny when it was produced. It wasn't just something that was sort of thought up and endorsed and in operation the next day. There is a lot of effort that goes into a robust basis of evidence that helps you formulate the policies that you do. Now, you'll see from the appendix and the report, the summary report to you, that there are a number of surveys saying that there's still an inadequacy of industrial and commercial employment provision in the eastern part of the district. And that in itself justifies, as officers consider, that there is the evidence there to show that this site is still in need, and that your local plan that you'll be producing in the years ahead will no doubt replicate that. The situation would be worse if Star Lane was to be redeveloped as initially thought some time ago, because then there would be extra need. So on the basis that Star Lane stays, as I think members were saying last time, there is still a strong evidence base that this site should be released. Now, the other part of the members' concerns were the consequences of refusing the application, that it's not necessary. It's difficult to predict appeal outcomes. Officers do their best when they write to assess the information that is to be considered and put before you a recommendation. And obviously we're recommending that the application be approved. We would assume that an inspector would do the same. That's not always a given, but it's a likelihood that the inspector, when they look at what's before them, they give weight to certain things. And in the balance, the allocation that's been through a process that I described earlier, that has substantial weight in favour of granting permission. And then if members are saying, well, that's a bit dated now and we don't think it's necessary, you start to alter the balance. But officers are saying that doesn't alter the balance in such a strong way to be completely the opposite way. So officers think that you would have to, if you're mounting a defence to say it isn't necessary, you would have to outgun your own evidence that you've got being produced for informing your new local plan that says that there is a demand for commercial space in this part of the district. You'd have to contradict those findings of those surveys and reports that are helping you to say, well, in this case it's different, we disagree, they've got it wrong. Now, you're entitled to do that. You're elected representatives, we just advise you. But if you decide to go that way, and you're asking us what would our chances be on appeal, I have to say that you would have to make a case to effectively rubbish the platform of what's gone before and what is being produced at the moment, which is set out for you in the report. You'd have to have enough to say these guys have got it wrong to be able to successfully defend that reason. That's my advice to you. On the addendum, members will see that there's further letters of objection from 2 addresses. The recommendation is that, subject to the applicants entering into a legal agreement to the terms and the conditions that are set out on the report of approval, there is one amendment to condition 33 in relation to noise that, on reflection, officers have reviewed and seek that it will be, if members are minded to approve, to include it in the revised wording of condition 33 on the addendum. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Stranks. We have one public speaker on this item. Mr. Finn would like to speak in support of the application. Mr. Finn, would you like to come over to the... Do you know how the microphone works? I remind you, you've got 5 minutes to make your speech. Thank you.
Great. Good evening, Chair, members, and thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of this application. I am James Finn, a Planning Director at Stantec and the agent for the planning application. I've considered the concerns raised during the last committee and noted 2 main points. Firstly, the site's employment allocation is dependent on Star Lane Industrial Estate being redeveloped and accommodating those existing businesses that are displaced. And secondly, that there's no demand for this type of employment use in this location, and this demand has not been demonstrated by the applicant. I would say in response to that the Council's own planning policy officers have provided a comprehensive consultation response which provides a thorough and compelling response to both of these concerns, drawing on your adopted policies and the evidence base that underpins them. Your officer's conclusion is that the application fully accords with the site's allocation and is supported by robust and up-to-date evidence. Rather than repeating the points already made in detail by the officers, I would like to highlight a few key points on behalf of the applicant. Pre-application discussions with officers confirmed that the allocation is not contingent on Star Lane's redevelopment and that the proposed uses are supported in principle. The applicant prepared the submission on this basis, on the basis of these positive discussions. Some members raised concerns about the age of the allocation from 2014. However, there's been considerable evidence produced by the Council that continues to support the allocation of the site. Most recently, the Council's own employment land study, published in 2024 and approved a committee, recommends that the proposed allocation should be retained for employment use. Demand for this type of employment space has been clearly demonstrated. The application has been made on the basis that the applicant is confident in the market need. Moreover, the Council's evidence base from 2023 and 2024 continues to confirm high levels of demand for modern, flexible employment floor space in this location. It is also worth reminding members that this proposal delivers significant economic benefits. It will create a substantial number of jobs for local people, contributing to the local economy and supporting the borough's growing housing need. This application is made in accordance with the Council's own policies, meets the demonstrated need, and offers significant benefit to the local economy. It has been prepared in consultation with the Council and is recommended for approval by officers. I respectfully request that members follow the recommendation and support this application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Finn. Ward members, Foulness and Wakering, we have Councillor McPherson, Myers and FD. Councillor FD, would you like to speak on this matter?
Thank you, Chairman. It seems like in 2014, when this was first put to us, that Star Lane wouldn't be built into the other trading estate, was tended to housing. It seems to be a broken promise to the people of Great Wakering. Council policy has moved on, and what they're deciding to do now, it doesn't sit well with people of Great Wakering, but we are where we are. If the members are minded to agree this, the speed limit on Star Lane, where the entrance was going to be, is before where the 30 mile an hour is. I can't see anything on there on the conditions about the 30 mile an hour being applied for and granted before the place being built out. Can't see that in anywhere. I might have missed it, but if that's not granted for some reason, they won't be able to turn out of the industrial estate onto that road. So I'd like some clarification on that, please. I'm pleased to see that there's a new noise on the appendix, looking at the noise, what disturbance you have to the local housing, but also could we have something about lighting? Only bit of lighting I see on there is about the animals and ecology. I don't see anything about lighting where it's disturbing local people. And if I remember correctly, I'll be quite happy to be reminded I'm not remembering correctly, but the officers were going to talk to the developer about moving the extenuation tank to the north of the industrial estate to make like a barrier between the housing and the industrial estate. I don't know if that happened or what's happened with that. With the transport allocation, is that going to be, it says a 5-year transport allocation of about £7,000? Is that going to be to the people of the built out industrial estate, or I'm not quite sure what that is going to be for? Is there going to be a footpath, no, not footpath, a bollards or something in the middle of Star Lane for people to cross over from the bus stop? Because that was brought up last time. Also, if wheelchair access is needed, and the buses are not particularly well manned or very frequent in Great Wakeling. So I don't quite know how that's going to work. So some answers on that would be most useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rafferty. Mr. Stranks.
Chairman, I'm at some disadvantage because I didn't pen this report. But the attenuation tank I can't help you with. I don't know anything about that. In terms of lighting, obviously, when you're putting in conditions, it's sometimes to mitigate harm. And presumably what's happened, and the ecologists that we consult have drawn attention that the development would have artificial lighting that in some way would harm probably bats, because although they rely on radar, they also are influenced by light. So there's probably something in there about a certain design of lighting so that the bats aren't harmed. I don't think that it was to do with the spillage onto residential properties. So that's why it's got an ecology bias. The transport monitoring, which I think is in the legal agreement, that's to do with just the industrial states. The idea is to encourage car sharing and things like that as a mode of transport, and what they require is a management contribution to help them see how well that's doing or not, as the case may be. So that is solely to do with the running, if you like, of the estate. It's nothing to do with the residential neighbouring plots. My limited understanding of the footpath is that there was to be a link between the access going north, but I don't know anything about the bus shelters. I can't help you with that. In terms of the speed limit, I don't see anything from the County Highway Authority that has said that has got to be reduced. I understand the merits of it from members, but what would have to happen is that the developer would have to pay for the necessary studies, audits and things that would go into that, and the county council would be persuaded to change the limit, which is outside of the planning permission. But if it was the case that highways were recommending a change to the speed limit, they would seek the monies from the developer to undertake the work to bring that about. But it's sometimes the case that highways don't want it changed for whatever reasons. That isn't before you. So with the water tank, I'm sorry, that's two things that I can't give you any further update on.
Thank you, Mr. Stranks. I think the attenuation tank was something Councillor Stanley actually brought up last time, but before I bring him in, can I ask Caroline Corrigan to come in, please?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me? Thank you, Chair. So this is an outline application for the access. Layout is a reserved matter for future consideration. So you will have an indicative layout supplied as part of the application, but it's not fixed. It will be a good indication of where the attenuation tank is likely to be sited, but for this particular application, you are looking at the access only.
Thank you. Mr. Stranks.
Chairman, being able to reflect, if you look at the recommendation on page 6.9, it was asked about the bus service enhancements. You'll see that one of the terms of the legal agreement we're recommending, C, does talk about bus service infrastructure enhancements to upgrade the 2 bus stops facilities on Star Lane to the north of the proposed development. So I can rein back a bit on what I said earlier. It's in the agreement. We wouldn't itemise it out in detail. What would happen is that the lawyers would go away, talk to the Highway Authority and the applicant, and they would come to agreement that satisfies that broad term.
Councillor Rafferty.
Am I allowed to come back very quickly?
Very quickly.
The speed limit, I think I was informed by actually Councillor Myers, who used to be in the business with speeding and vehicles, and it refers to goods vehicles turning onto a a national speed carriageway. So that's where that comes from. It's not turning onto a 30, it's turning onto a 60.
Chairman,
France.
thank you. Sorry, I was going back. I think I said I'd said I couldn't find anything on the bus stops. As I say, I still can't find anything on the speed limit. So I was just confirming that it has been covered in the legal agreement about the bus stop enhancement, which is what was raised. But I'm still unable to help you on the speed limit.
Thank you. I'll go to committee members now. Councillor Steptoe.
Thank you, Chairman. Is it possible we could have the site plan up on the screen, please? Chairman, just while officers are sorting out that, I'd like to just sort of mention there is an industrial area in Rawrath Lane, which over the years housing has become built around it. It's now, over many years, it's been very problematic with the noise and the dust and etc. for those houses because of the industrial estate. It's interesting to note that on this occasion, we're actually doing it the other way around. We're surrounding a set of houses with industrial area. And I wonder to the wisdom of that, and I personally don't think it's particularly very wise. Now we've got the site plan up on the screen, I can perhaps pick up on some points. Where the entrance to the site is, just slightly north of that, okay, you can see there's a roadway that goes down from left to right. That's actually a private road, which is goes down to the fishing lakes. Now, just at the corner of that, right in that little top left-hand corner there, where there's a building, that's a house, that's where the footpath ends. Just roughly there, just as you come across that private driveway, that's roughly where the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit ends. There is no further pavement, although it shows it on here. There is no further pavement anywhere further south, right the way down the length of the road. There is a pavement on the opposite side of the road, but as has already been mentioned, this section of road is a 60-mile-an-hour limit. So vehicles pulling out of there will have to turn into a 60-mile-an-hour speed limit. Yes, I would like to see the 30-mile-an-hour extended right the way down to where it becomes 40, which is a bit further down off of this drawing. It's a bit of a silly bit because they come out of the 40, speed up to 60, and then don't bother to slow down for the 30. So it is already an issue that's coming forward. If that is an industrial area, the buses come up from south to north along that road past the entrance. So people getting off the bus coming from Southend to work there will have to cross the 60-mile-an-hour road. There is no facilities there for crossing the road. There's no zebra crossing, or even for the other existing industrial estate. So I have some concerns around that. Going south from the entrance down towards the bottom of the drawing there are no streetlights. The streetlights finish. So if this is a mind to go forward with the development, I do feel that there needs to be consideration for increasing the number of streetlights along that section of road. The speaker, and I think the officer also mentioned, around surveys carried out on the potential need for the site. I'm not aware of the surveys. Perhaps I've missed something going forward. Which surveys were they? Where were they taken? How were they taken? Because I do know that Shoebury, which is only a hop, skip and a jump away from this site, there is spare capacity, which is not being filled in. In Rochford itself, we've got the large industrial area that is being currently developed. That is struggling to fill up the site. So I would question the need, particularly as this is just going to almost landlock a housing estate. So they're my main concerns. Going forward, that if there is a mind to approve this, there's a couple of items I'd like to see put into the conditions on there, is that a assessment, I think is probably the right word, of the speed limit from where the 30 finishes and goes into 60 is carried out and is taken forward. That street lighting itself is improved along that section of road, and it is a dark section of road. And that the working hours on page 6.12, item 12, goes across on 6.13. In the first paragraph, item 12 there, it says the hours between 6 p.m. and 7 a.m. I'd like to see that changed to 6 p.m. and 8 a.m. And on the first paragraph at the top of page 6.13, I know it says there about working on bank holidays, on any bank holidays on Sundays, but when it's a bank holiday weekend, I would like that to include Saturdays. So we do give at least those residents a little bit of respite over a bank holiday weekend, rather than having the noise of machinery going at that time. So those particular items, if there's a mind to approve this, I would like to put them as an amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Steptoe. If you'd like to turn your mic off. Bear with me a moment, members, please. Members, I'd like, before Councillor O'Leary comes in, I'd just like Caroline to actually clarify something for us, please, on one of those matters.
Thank you, Chair, through Chair. So the speed along the highways outside the gift of the applicant or this committee to insist on a speed reduction, the Highway Authority have responded to say that the visibility displays coming out of the new axis accord with their standards, and they're completely happy that vehicles can enter and leave the site access completely within their safety standards. Paragraph 2.28 then goes on to set out the 3 metre shared footway cycleway to be provided on the east side of Star Lane headed north. There's also 2 new pedestrian crossings to be installed, as well as an upgrade to the existing Star Lane northbound bus stop. So the Highway Authority have set out the improvements that they consider are necessary, along with the visibility displays that they say can be achieved on site, which covers their safety concerns. Unfortunately, things like highway lighting and reducing speeds along the highway are not within the gift of the applicant or this committee.
Chairman, if I could just come back to a couple of points there.
Councillor Steptoe.
Thank you. You mentioned there about zebra crossing. You said a crossing point. They need to be in 30-mile-an-hour speed limits, if I'm correct, if I'm right.
I think we actually said drop curb rather than a crossing point.
That's what I'm trying to clarify, is what I got the impression you were talking of a zebra crossing.
Thank you, through Chair. So it's drop curbs and tar paving. That's paragraph 2.28 in your report, sets out the highway
Okay.
requirements.
So it's just a crossing point rather than a pedestrian crossing, which would indicate a zebra crossing.
Correct.
Zebra type crossing. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Stranks.
Chairman, thank you. Just a couple of things. The hours that were suggested, if members were minded, there's those hours at condition 12, you could vary along the lines that you've suggested just by varying that condition. But main reason for coming in, condition 32, the point was made about the footway. If we could see the plan, please. The applicant, if you look at condition 32, has actually given us a detailed spec along the site frontage there. And my reading of that is that they would continue the footway from their site entrance on the one side of the street that they can control northwards to the housing, obviously stopping where you access the Fishing Lakes Road. But they would put a footway in between the Fishing Lake entrances to their first, to the entry point into the site. If you can drop the image down a little so we can see the detail at the top, that might be clearer for members. See the yellow surface there. It comes in from the radius into their site on the left-hand image, and you'll see continues down to where it says 17445. That's the entrance to the Fishing Lake area. So they are offering in the access works, and there's a condition 32 that conditions, if members are minded to approve, that this drawing be approved and they implement that, because at the moment, apart from the principle, they're dealing with the access details. So the footway would be provided, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Chair. Condition 32 also mentions the existing system of street lighting should be extended southward to cover the site Essex junction and all associated pedestrian infrastructure, including the 3-metre shared footway. And the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit should be extended southwards to cover the site's access junction. So I'm a new boy, but I'm slightly confused at some of the objections here because it seems like it's covered by the conditions already.
Bear with me, members. Thank you, members. I'll now ask Nalga to come in on this, please.
Thank you, Chair. Condition 32 ends after the first paragraph on page 619, and that only covers what the developer is required to do and what they have the power to do and is within their gift, to use Caroline's words. There's a note at the end of that that's essentially an informative that says, that explains that the relocation and the change to a 30-mile-per-hour zone is subject to a different process that essentially involves changing a traffic regulation order and carrying out consultation and all that sort of thing. And so what the highway authority seem to be asking for is a contribution from the developer to carry out the work that can't be guaranteed because it is subject to statutory consultation. So what members could ask for is for this contribution to be secured in the Section 106 agreement. It can't be done by a condition because you can't require monies under a planning condition, but you could ask for it under a Section 106 agreement.
Thank you, Nagla. Mr. Strengths.
Nothing to add, Chairman.
Councillor Lurie.
So, if this condition is not within the gift of us or the developer, and it's not fulfilled, let's say because Essex Highways don't go through with it, or whoever is responsible, does that not mean that we can't progress if they don't fulfil this condition? I'm slightly confused what's going on.
Caroline.
Thank you, Chair.
Nagla.
So I'll tell you honestly, I hadn't spotted this note. What I would expect it to be is in the body of the report of asking for monies towards a survey. What the Highway Authority can't do is guarantee that those monies will result in a change of the 30-mile-per-hour zone, because that's subject to a separate legal process that involves statutory consultation. So they can't preempt what the outcome will be. All they can ask for is for the additional work, essentially, that is needed to carry out a consultation about whether or not it should be changed into a 30-mile-per-hour zone for for the developer to contribute to it. And the reason for that is because it's needed as a result of that development. So what I can tell you is that it would be what we say called Regulation 122 compliant, which means that it's something that is considered necessary, a contribution, in order to make this development acceptable. Now, I don't know if that was an express request by Essex County Council Highways, and we could probably check that. But given that it is in here as a note, my strong suspicion is that instead of having been put into the report as a Section 106 obligation, it's been put as a note following on from a condition, but it really should be a request for Section 106 is my suspicion. But I haven't seen the Essex County Council statutory consultation response, but from my experience of reading these sorts of things, I suspect that this is a request for money to help carry out the surveys that they need to do in order to consider whether or not to implement a 30-mile-per-hour zone in that location. And that's a separate statutory process that is carried out. It's not uncommon. It happens in other parts of the country quite frequently that developers are asked to make a contribution. The applicant's agent is still here. We could ask him if he's aware. He's probably best placed to say whether they've been asked to make a contribution. So if the chair was minded to allow the applicant to answer the question, we might be able to resolve the mystery of this note now.
Thank you, Nagla. Mr. Finn, are you in a position to answer this? Okay, I'm going to take some other questions. If you could carry on looking for that, if you do find it, if you could signal to me, please. Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chairman. There seems to be a discrepancy here on the 60 mile an hour from the south of the site, and then it would drop down to 30 mile an hour, and then go back to 40 mile an hour. I think that it needs to be clarified a lot further than that. That 60 mile an hour.
I think, Councillor Stanley, I'll be able to answer your question before you need any further. Councillor Steptoe.
Yeah, just to give Councillor Stanley some clarification, if you're coming from the south, if you go to the larger part of the screen there, if you scroll it down, yeah, where you've got the dotted line going left to right, it gets to a point where it then goes north. That point is there. That's where the 40 mile an hour changes. That's the boundary of Southend at that junction. That is 40 mile an hour up to that point. And as you swing round the road, there actually is a natural curve there that directs the traffic round to into Star Lane. That 40 mile an hour limit changes just as you come off of that corner, changes to 60, and then roughly where the top red line is, just about there, that's where it changes to 30. So it goes 40, 60, 30, all within about 200 yards.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to point out is that the 30 should be right from the point of entry into Star Lane, and not 60, not 60 and then 30.
Correct, that's what I was being
That's what we're talking about, Councillor Stanley. Thank you. If you would mind turning your mic off, please.
Oh, sorry about that.
Councillor Eaves.
Thank you, Chair. Listening to the explanation of this report from Mike, it's pretty obvious that if we were to refuse this item, that we'd be on a sticky wicket. I think knowing that this is just an outline permission that is being sought here, one of the things that I'd like to emphasise is, obviously because the client's agent is here, is that if there isn't sufficient green lung, let's say, between the industrial and the residential, that it'd be on notice that we would have a problem with that as a committee. I think I've heard that fairly clearly all the way through. So the layout, although we are not considering that tonight, I'd like the agent to actually take note that we are concerned about that from the point of view of the residents, and bearing in mind that, as Mr. Stranks has actually already told us, that if we were to turn this down, the likelihood of this being turned round on appeal is high. So I think that's the best that we could probably look at as an outcome for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eaves, and Mr. Stranks was very clear on the outset in respect of we are the ones who have actually agreed in the first place, and now we've actually got to contradict what we agreed in the first place. If Mr. Stranks could actually just clarify what we're actually voting on tonight. So there's, and also it is this is a recorded meeting, so your comments have been recorded, and obviously the agent has got that loud and clear. But if you could just clarify exactly what we are voting on, please.
Chairman, you have an outline application that is for the commercial development as described. So you're dealing with the principles of acceptability, but in the detail, they've just asked for access to be considered at this stage, which is why we've looked at plans of access radii and footpaths and things like this. So what happens beyond the access would be a matter for what we call a reserved matters application. That the second half, when you have permissions like this, you have the outline that is one half, and then you get the reserved matters, which is all the nuts and bolts and the details, lighting, appearance of buildings, landscaping, matters like that. So what's before you is the principle of developing the land, whether that's acceptable, and if the access is acceptable to you. They're the two strands of this application.
Sorry, please. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. Caroline, if you could just clarify the 30 mile an hour limit, please.
Thanks, Chair. Back to this one. So the Highway Authority did indeed ask for 30 mile per hour speed limit to be extended southwards, but then they include a note. So that's been replicated in the condition. So that's why it's in the report. But in fact, the note from the Highway Authority then goes on to explain that the relocation of an illegal process associated with the moving of the 30 mile per hour zone is subject to a different process separate to the Town and Country Planning Act. Those matters are administered by the Highway Authority under the Highways Act. So all costs associated with the advertisement, design, legal orders and relocation of the 30 mile per hour zone shall be covered by the developer.
Councillor Steptoe.
Just to clarify that condition 32 does need to be amended, and it's an informative, and then it's for the Highway Authority to liaise with the developer to bring that forward, the 30 mile per hour zone.
Bear with me a moment, members. Before I come to you, Councillor Eaves, Mr. Finn, would you be able to come forward, please? Thank you, Mr. Finn. Nagla, would you like to ask the question, please?
On behalf of the Chair, could I ask you whether the Highways Authority has requested a contribution to alleviate the impact of this development by way of a contribution to pay towards the necessary legal processes to implement a 30 mile per hour zone?
I still have been unable to find the Highways Authority's response, which sets that out. So I can't confirm that at this stage, unfortunately.
Thank you. Chair, if this is something that, as I've listened to members considering this matter, that this is a something that they consider to be significant, the 30 mile per hour zone, my recommendation would be that the matter, the 30 mile per hour zone, and whether the Highways Authority wishes to request a Section 106 contribution, be delegated to the, in this authority, is it the Director of Planning, to negotiate an appropriate sum with the Highways Authority, if that is what they require, and if not, to for this matter to be brought back. But in the first instance, my recommendation would be, or my advice to you would be, in order to allow this matter to be to proceed without the need to come back, you could delegate the negotiation of a contribution into the investigation whether a 30 mile per hour zone should come forward to the relevant director, and provided that an adequate contribution is made, that the application is approved. If the Highways Authority doesn't consider it necessary to have a contribution towards this, that the matter then comes back to you for final decision. And I'm saying that on the basis that in all other respects you're satisfied, that you wish to approve it, other than this issue. But what I would say is there's a mechanism by which you can avoid this coming back to committee again, provided that there's an investigation into whether the traffic regulation order can be changed. So if you were satisfied, Chair, that would be a way of dealing with this one issue.
Thank you, Nagla. Thank you, Mr. Finn. You may return to your seat. Councillor Eaves.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to suggest something along the same lines, not that I'm qualified as our advisor, but what I would like, it was a very verbose answer, could we have a concise, something that we know that we're actually approving or not, so as we know what's actually being written down in the conditions, rather a long explanation, so as we can actually approve something definite, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Nagler and Caroline work that out. I'll go to Councillor Steptoe.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't foresee there being a problem with county doing some form of assessment. Officer used consultation. I used the word assessment. When the housing estate was built, the 30 mile an hour speed limit was moved down along that section of road at that point anyway. So I don't see that being an issue for county to look further into it. They've already done it once. I'm sure they can do it again.
To Councillor Steptoe. Caroline, are we in a position to?
Thank you, through Chair. So regarding condition 32 is correct to the point where it asks for the existing system of street lighting should be extended southward, etc. And that part should be considered under a Section 106 commitment between the applicant and Essex Highway Authority. So there'd be a tri-party Section 106. I'll defer to my legal colleague here. So everything up until that point is correct, and the reason for that is still correct. But the part about street lighting and 30 mile per hour zone should be included as a Section 106. So the suggestion is that if the committee is resolving to approve otherwise, it's on the basis that the street lighting and the 30 mile per hour speed limit is agreed under a Section 106.
Councillor Reeves, is that clear?
Yes, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Steptoe.
Chairman, if you're looking to consider moving acceptance of this, I'd like to remind you about the amendment on the working hours that I put forward earlier on. I would seek perhaps a seconder to that as an amendment. I'm quite happy with the wording for the other section around the 30 mile an hour speed limit, and obviously I'll pick up on that in another forum. So I'd like to see that amendment I've suggested about working hours added in to the conditions, please.
Thank you, Councillor Steptoe. I think I remember you actually bringing this up at the original discussion that we were talking about. Mr. Stokes, can you come back in regarding the hours, please?
Yes, Chair. It's okay to vary condition 12. I've got that. But I was just wanting to be clear that there was also in the addendum, officers were saying about the revision to the noise condition, condition 33. So when you vote, we'd be seeking whether you agree officers' suggestion to revamp condition 33 as described in the addendum, the hours that you're saying as an adjustment to condition 12, and then the revisions to condition 32 about removing those end parts into the legal agreement as discussed by the planning manager.
Okay. Any more questions? Can we have a seconder for Councillor Steptoe? Councillor Mrs. Shaw. Could I have a show of hands for, please? Councillor Steptoe was more specific, was it not?
Chairman, I did include the, and I assume that what the officer was saying about the changing the wording to 106 was going to be part of that.
Okay.
Yes, look, the officer also mentioned the other conditions on the noise as needed to be approved as well. So is this all part of what we're approving now, please?
So effectively, what you're saying, Councillor Steptoe, is you're talking about the hours, the noise, and the road speed. Yes, Councillor Shaw. Councillor Shaw seconding. Can you bear with me a minute, members, please? Councillor Eaves.
Thank you, Chair. Can I suggest for clarity that we actually vote on each amendment? There's only 3, but it will make it very clear. Thank you.
I'll have to do these individually. Councillor Cross.
Thank you, Chair. I am still not clear on the speed limit aspects of this. I understand that under Section 106, the developer would pay for the cost of the 30-mile-an-hour limit, but I'm not sure how far south it's to be extended. I would like to see it from the main road to the north extended as far south as 200 metres past the proposed entrance to the site. And that would, being a 30-mile-an-hour zone, it would also incorporate naturally street lighting at regular spacing as well. So that comes with it. So I would like to propose 200 metres south of the entrance to be...
Members, please.
So 200 metres south of the entrance to be a 30-mile-an-hour zone as well.
Caroline Nagler.
Chair, that's not something that you can require because that is something that for the Highway Authority to assess. That is not a statutory function of the council. So they take the money from the developer, they carry out their surveys and do a consultation, and they decide what is appropriate in that location, taking all the relevant considerations that come into whether or not that should be changed into account. So you can't dictate as part of this process what the result is in essence. What you can do is ask for the developer to pay for that process to be undertaken in order for the impact to be assessed and for the Highway Authority to take a view about whether or not it's required or not. It doesn't guarantee you a specific outcome.
Thank you, Nagler. Councillor Cross.
Yes, thank you for that clarification, Nicola. I stand educated.
Nagler. Right, could I ask Councillor Steptoe, as we're taking them through, can you do your item 12, which is an amendment to the working hours? Could I ask you to propose it?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just to clarify with Councillor Cross, I personally think the speed limit should go down right to the 40, but that is a matter that I will deal with in a separate forum.
Thank you, Councillor Steptoe.
Did you want the different amendments? Do you want them all together, or is separate?
I'm going to have to do them separately. So it's item 12.
The first one was item 12 to change the working hours on the first paragraph on page 6.12 from 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. And on the paragraph at the top of page 6.13 is that it says there construction at nothing before 8 a.m. on Saturday. But what my suggestion is that on a bank holiday weekend, which they won't allow Sunday working, but to also include a Saturday on a bank holiday weekend.
Do I have a second? Sorry, Councillor Eaves.
Just a very quick clarification there. Councillor Steptoe did say working hours between 6
Yes,
p.m.
the other way round.
Yeah, it's the other way round. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mrs Shaw. That proposal is before you. Those in favour? That's unanimous. Councillor Steptoe, your second one.
Chairman, that's with reference to item 32, and perhaps officers will correct me if I get this wrong, that the change in the wording is in the section that is the note, and it's the last few words, shall be covered by the developer. I think you need to add in by section 106. Have I got the right word in there?
Chair, that part of the condition should be deleted and a separate recommendation added that delegates the negotiation of an appropriate contribution towards investigating a change in the 60 mile per hour zone at the front of the property. To the director, and provided that such a contribution towards investigating a traffic regulation order is made, that this committee gives authority to the director to grant planning permission. Should then there be no contribution towards such a traffic regulation order amendment, the matter shall be come back to committee for reconsideration.
Sorry, Chair, in all what you've said there, you haven't actually mentioned negotiating S106 agreement.
So that's in the delegation. So the authority be given to the director to negotiate a Section 106 agreement. But the first step of that is, of course, ensuring that the Highway Authority actually wants this money and wants to change and investigate a change in the speed limit. So the first part of the recommendation is that the authority be given to the director to negotiate with, what's the best word? Sorry, excuse my slow putting together of this at this hour. The first part of the recommendation is that that this committee delegates to the director a negotiation with the Highway Authority about a Section 106 contribution towards investigating an amendment of the traffic regulation order. Should the Highway Authority wish to secure such a contribution, a Section 106 be made a condition, as a legal agreement let me start again. Should the Highway Authority require such a contribution, the developer be required to make such a Section 106 contribution under a legal agreement which the planning permission will be granted subject to. So, however, should the Highway Authority not be minded to wish to require a contribution, that this matter be remitted back to the committee for consideration. Sorry, it's a bit wordy because it is an unusual situation. I just want, the reason I made that recommendation to you, because it will avoid you either refusing this matter today or having to hear the case again when it's easily resolved. So I apologise for my long, worded recommendation, but I think that will make most people happy, I would have thought, both councillors and the applicant, I hope.
Thank you, Nagla. So effectively what we're doing is agreeing to delegate to the director the decision to make on our behalf that our requests for the speed limits are adhered to with the developer and the 106 money forthcoming. If they are not in agreement, then it will come back to us.
And I was just going to quote Monty Python and simply say, "She said."
Do I have a Councillor Steptoe is proposing? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Constable, one moment, please.
Excuse me.
It's unusual, but Councillor After, yes, if you'd like to come in.
What the officer just said, if you give permission to be dedicated and they start working, it doesn't get dedicated, it's got to come back here to get re-permissioned again. That seems to be sort of a juxtaposition where they're going to start work, then they haven't got planning permission. Just a clarification, please.
Nagla.
They won't get planning permission unless and until they've entered into Section 106 Agreement to provide the contribution to look into an amendment of the traffic regulation order. If there is no such contribution, the matter will come back before this committee to decide again, taking that new material fact into consideration as to whether or not they want to grant planning permission anyway. So it will be a new consideration. It won't be a reconsideration, it'll be a new consideration in those circumstances. So nobody can start any works until that's resolved.
That's what I was going for, so no work should start until that's resolved.
No.
Thank you, Nagla. We have proposed by Councillor Steptoe, seconded by Councillor Constable. Can we have a vote for? Show of hands. That is no. That is those against. Those abstaining. Okay, that has been passed. Now I'll go for the variation of 33, which is already in, subject to the conditions set out on page 6.10, 6.2, the amendment to conditions 33 that is on page 2 of the addendum. Okay. Right, members, I'm going to proceed to move a motion from the chair. It's proposed that the committee resolves that the outline planning permission be approved subject to the completion of a legal agreement under section 106 of the Act for the heads of terms out below. A monitoring fee payment of £7,037.16 plus relevant sustainable travel indexation in connection with the implementation of a workplace travel plan, which shall be actively implemented for a minimum period of 5 years and be paid before occupation. B, infrastructure improvements to public rights of way, footpath number 8 to the north and east of the site, which is to be upgraded to provide improved servicing type 1 and edge timber boards from Alexandra Road for the length of approximately 220 metres. The improvement shall also include waymarking posts to define the route. C, bus service infrastructure enhancements to upgrade the 2 existing bus stop facilities on Star Lane to the north of the proposed development, and the voted on amendments of 12, 32 and 33. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Stuart Wilson. That motion is before you. Could I have a show of hands for? Against? Abstain? That motion is passed. The meeting has now lasted roughly 2 hours. I would like to move a motion without notice in line with the committee procedure rule 9N to extend this meeting for as long as necessary in order to complete the business. Could I have a seconder?
Chairman, can we have a comfort break, please?
I've sorted it out, but you can certainly have a comfort break. Can I just say I cannot stop the live stream, so please can I remind members not to go on their microphones during the comfort break. Members, Members, committee and subcommittee procedure rules 9.1. Any meeting that has lasted for 2.5 hours will adjourn immediately unless the majority of members present vote for the meeting to continue. The resolution to continue will specify the maximum amount of time for such an extension, usually in increments of 30 minutes. Bearing in mind the where we are within the meeting, I still recommend that we extend till the end of business.
Sorry, point of order. You've just said we've got to do it in 30-minute increments, so that's what the Constitution says. So after half an hour, we vote again. That is what the Constitution says, unless you've actually rewrote the Constitution.
Says to continue will specify the maximum amount of time for such an extension, usually in increments of 30 minutes.
Yes, but you can't just say you'll do it forever.
Okay, in 30 minutes I will ask you again. Those in favour of the extension for increments of 30 minutes, please raise your hand. For. Could you keep your hands raised, please? That motion's passed. Item 7, 2400496 REM, land north of London Road, Rayleigh. Katie Rogers will present the report.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me? You can't hear me, can you? Oh, God, it's going to be tricky. Let me just push this back a little bit. No. This application relates to land which forms part of a wider site now known as Wolsey Park. The application site is shown red on the screen, on the plan on screen on the right hand side. And this is an area here. I'll just outline it with my cursor there. You can see that there's an existing attenuation pond just to the north of the site, shown by the cursor. And this forms part of the surface water drainage strategy for the wider site. The surface water drainage strategy has been dealt with at the outline planning stage and is not a matter for determination in this application tonight. The southern boundary of the application site borders the Spine Road. That's in the position marked here with my cursor. And then the other boundaries of the site to the east and the north and the west border existing or what will be public open space. Members will see from the aerial image, just to give a bit of context, that the application site is approximately in this area here, where you can see the cursor on the screen. So just north of this section of Spine Road, just before it crosses the Rawrath Brook here. So you've got the Rawrath Brook that runs across the site or bisects the site sort of east to west. Members will note, and actually the development of the wider site has moved on a bit since this aerial image was taken. So actually there is some development of housing here in this parcel to the north. This is the closest parcel. So there are some existing housing here, but that's across from the Rawrath Brook. So quite separate from this eastern boundary of the application site. The application site already benefits from outline planning permission for residential development, and this application now seeks approval of details of layout, scale, appearance, access and landscaping for 53 dwellings. A mix of 1, 2, 3 and 4 bed dwellings is proposed, and the proposal would deliver the required affordable housing. The vehicular access to the site off the Spine Road, which is in this position here, already benefits from full planning permission. The road that would lead off this would have separate carriageway and footways, and then would terminate with a raised table off which would be a shared surface street. So the raised table is in this location here, and then what you have in the remainder of the sites is shared surface streets here, and then extending off to the east with some shared surface and private drives providing access to the remainder of the properties. No dead-end streets would feature in the layout, as pedestrian links through to the public open space and Spine Road bordering the site would be provided. So what you're going to have is pedestrian access points to the public space here on the eastern boundary. Again, at this point on the northern boundary here, you'll have access through on the western boundary here, and then there'll be 1, 2, 3, and then another 4th point of access here for pedestrians to access wider parts of the site. An officer's view that the proposed layout of streets is well considered and would allow pedestrians to navigate around the development with ease and access amenities and facilities surrounding the site without having to take convoluted routes. A number of dwellings would be on corner plots. So for instance, so here and here, and there's quite a number of those throughout the layout. And those houses would be treated with windows on both elevations to avoid large extents of unattractive blank side walls within the street scene. The scheme would achieve good opportunities for passive surveillance of the streets and the area of open space, which is in this area here. If you can see my cursor, sort of centrally positioned within the site. So as a result of windows in dwellings which would face these the streets in this space, this should help to ensure that pedestrians feel safe in this new environment. A number of different approaches to car parking provision are proposed, and as a result, parked cars should not dominate the streets. Some spaces would be on driveways. If I just zoom in a little bit there, so you can see that these properties here, these would have driveway parking spaces, and then a couple of the properties would benefit from carports. And then some parking spaces would be in sort of small rows to the front of dwellings. And then you've got some sort of parking courts. There's one in this western area of the site here that would serve mainly the flatted blocks, but some of the terraced housing as well. Sorry. Soft landscaping would include tree planting between rows of parking spaces. So you can see on the layout here, so where you have got rows, these are interspersed with tree planting, and again, here and here in this parking court area. And officers consider that that would soften the visual impact of parked cars and create an attractive street scene. Trees would also be provided within verges and within areas within the public open space. And officers consider that the scheme would deliver the requirement for tree-lined streets. The layout has been assessed in terms of the separation distance and relationship between the proposed siting of dwellings and the positioning of windows to consider impacts of overshadowing and potential for overlooking. And the layout of dwellings is considered acceptable with regard to ensuring future occupants would benefit from a good level of residential amenity. All the houses would be provided with enclosed rear gardens, and the 2 flatted blocks would feature private balconies and an area of communal garden space. So, for instance, so this is one of the flatted blocks towards the western boundary. So I'll show you on the elevation plan in a second, but there would be balconies to this elevation here, facing the west and to the south. And then if you see here, just to the east of the block, there's a sort of enclosed private communal garden space. So in terms of scale, the buildings proposed would be a mix of single-storey, 2-storey, 2.5 and 3, and the majority of houses would be 2-storey. These are shown green on the plan on the screen. The 3-storey flatted blocks are at either end of the southern boundary, so this here in this blue colour, and again over here to the east. In terms of scale, the buildings are considered to be appropriate in the site's context, and buildings of a similar scale feature to other development parcels to the north. small. I'll zoom in. So 4 street scenes are shown on this plan, but I've zoomed in so you can see them in a little bit more detail. And these give a flavour of the architectural style of the buildings proposed. The buildings would be of traditional form with gable-ended pitched tiled roofs. And variety in appearance of building would be achieved through different architectural detailing and the use of different external facing materials, which includes red brick, boarding and render. Other variation would be achieved with things like the porch design, the roof of that, and some of the properties would feature projecting bay windows. Only 2 of the properties would feature dormer windows. You can see there, this in sort of central position on the screen, and you can see that they are sort of small, incidental in scale to the roof, and they would feature a pitched roof, and that would be in accordance with your supplementary design policy. In terms of the visual impression that the proposed development would make in the street, the proposal is considered acceptable. And in conclusion, the application is limited in its scope and focuses on the consideration of the acceptability of the submitted details of layout, scale, appearance, access within the site, and landscaping. These details all contribute to how the character of a place is developed and how the development will be experienced. And the clear policy objective is that good design is achieved to result in a place which is visually pleasing and functions well. The submitted details have been assessed in relation to relevant planning policy and guidance, and the recommendation is one of approval, subject to the recommended planning conditions for the reasons given in the published report.
Thank you, Katie. We have one public speaker for this item, Mr. Coleman. You okay with the PA system? Mr. Coleman, you have 5 minutes to make your speech.
Well, thank you very much. Good evening, and thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'm sure many members are already very familiar with the Wolsey Park scheme, but just by way of a quick background, the overall development comprises 3 broad phases of development, all of which have outline planning permission, as Ms. Rogers has said.
Could you please move closer to your speaker? Thank you.
Is that better? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yes, sorry. 3 broad phases of development, all of which have outline planning permission, as Ms. Rogers has just mentioned. The first phase is on the north side of the site, fronting onto Rawrith Lane, and that's now essentially complete. The second phase is in the centre of the site as it falls down towards London Road, and that's part complete, part has detailed consent, part under construction. The application for you tonight is the first reserve matters application for the third and final phase of the development, which is towards the southern side of the site, just to the south of the Rawrith Brook. The strategic infrastructure to serve phase 3, including the spine road, the drainage, the open space, is all already substantially in place. It's already got 2 bus stops, it's already got a bus service, there's already a cycleway outside the site, and the access points are already in place as well. So the application tonight is really filling in the detail that sits alongside the strategic infrastructure in relation to the layout and design of the buildings. The design that you've been looking at on the screen has evolved as a result of close working between the applicant and your officers through a planning performance agreement. In addition to advice from your officers, we've also consulted the Highway Authority, and Essex Place Services as well have provided design input. It's been a joint effort to produce what we hope you'll agree is a successful design both in its own right and one that fits seamlessly with the designs that the committee's already approved for the earlier phases of the development in terms of layout, scale, design, materials and the landscaping. Overall, we're looking to deliver a high quality scheme with
a mix of different properties that complies with the outline consent. And we very much hope that the committee is able to support its officer's recommendation of approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. The ward members, Councillor Chris, Newport and Stanley. Would any ward members like to speak? Okay. Would you like to speak as a ward member or as a member? We have no ward members who'd like to speak. Any members like to speak? Councillor Eaves.
Thank you, Chair. There's just a small concern that I have is that what we do have on the plans is a good deal of the site that has no footpaths, and that is concern because obviously if we're going to be as a council encouraging walking and cycling with no footpaths over a good deal of the site, I wonder what the thinking is behind that, please.
Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chairman. I know this is to do with landscaping layout and how the properties look, but one thing that hasn't been reported in the report is the flooding and how they're going to mitigate the water from the site and where that's going to go.
Thank you, Councillor Stanley. It is something which Mr. Strengths has got some. Sorry, Katie, has some answers. Could you answer Mr. Eaves, Councillor Eaves and Councillor Stanley, please?
Yes. Councillor Eaves, the site does feature a number of shared surface streets, and they are a feature also of other parcels within the wider Wolsey Park development, some of which have been built out. And in terms of sort of the criteria for those, they have criteria associated with them, and in terms of the width, in terms of the number of dwellings that they serve, and the shared surface streets that are proposed, which are a mix because some of them are also sort of short private drives, but they're still shared surfaces. They do meet the Essex County Council's requirements for such. So we're satisfied that they are appropriate in terms of the combined or dual use for pedestrians and vehicles. You know, they're designed so that vehicle movement, their vehicle speeds should be slow. And the surfacing material of them, I mentioned the raised table that's at the junction where the sort of traditional street with a separate carriageway and footway meets the shared surface will be an indication to pedestrians and vehicle users that the environment's changing. So things like that are incorporated into the design, but the layout is satisfactory to the Highway Authority in terms of the different types of streets that are proposed. And Councillor Stanley.
Councillor Stanley, the actual outline planning actually did cover the drainage aspect of it. Katie, if you can be brief on it, because obviously limited on time, but that has already been covered.
Okay. Yes, so the outline planning consent has a number of conditions attached to it with regard to detailed requirements for all of the surface water drainage features, which include a number of attenuation ponds, and they've been sized in respect of calculations, very detailed calculations that have taken place in terms of drainage rates that need to be achieved for the water that's kind of leaving off-site eventually, that enters into the Raworth Brook, and the Lead Local Flood Authority are satisfied and have discharged or agreed details in respect of those conditions on the outline consent to enable the developer to have implemented that drainage strategy. So you'll see on site, and if I'd zoomed into that aerial image, you'll see that those attenuation basins are essentially now completed.
Thank you, Kate.
Can I come back, please, Chair?
Very quickly, please.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, I do realise that the attenuation ponds were put in extra, but I just wondered with this as a new site, they should put in some rain gardens along the road highway. Rain gardens will actually help this situation because of the rain that we had just recently, which actually was a considerable amount in one day. So I just wondered if we could put in.
Thank you,
rain
Councillor
gardens,
Stanley.
please.
Katie, have you got a quick response on that?
In terms of this application this evening, how we deal with surface water drainage is not a matter for consideration because that has been dealt with is part of the wider site at the outline planning stage, and the drainage strategy does include things like swales, not quite rain gardens, but swales along the road to capture some of the surface water and then attenuate it or move it towards the attenuation ponds and then eventually off-site.
Thank you, Katie.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Knight.
Thank you, Chair. On page 7.33, it says that that the Highways Authority have no objection, which I haven't, but it does state that a wheel and underbody washing facilities should be in place. Now, how can we make that? I know it's supposed to be compulsory, but we all know that they don't, and the debris that they leave on the roads, especially now, is terrible. I just want to make sure that somebody's there to monitor it and report it if possible, please.
Thank you, Councillor Knight. Enforcement actually will be dealing with that. Thank you. Any other members like to speak? Okay, I'll proceed to the motion from the chair. It is proposed that the committee resolves that reserved matters can consent to be approved subject to conditions on page 7.2, 7.8 of the report. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mrs. Shaw. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Against? Abstain? That has been passed. Thank you, members. Item 8, report fees and charges. To consider the report of the Director of Place setting out the fees and charges made by the Council for various services that they are reviewed on an annual basis by the relevant committee relating to the services provided. Ms Goodings, do you have any... Ms Corrigan, do you have anything to add to the report?
Thank you, Chair. So the report sets out that these charges are reviewed annually and they relate to the discretionary pre-application fees and high hedge fee. So it's proposed to increase the pre-application fees by around 3% from the 23-24 fee regime, and that reflects an increase in costs to maintain the service. And benchmarking against other local authorities would suggest that Rochford are one of the higher charging authorities in Essex, although not the highest. The existing fees are set out in the column on the left-hand side, I think, and then the proposed fees are set out in the right-hand column, which is the greyed-out area. So benchmarking householder pre-application costs, which so householders are the extensions to your own home, they remain affordable. They're comparable with Brentwood's new fee. They're less than Basildon and Chelmsford and Braintree, for example. Where there is a significant increase is the high hedge fee. This is a particularly resource-intensive service, which is statutory. So to meet full cost recovery, it's proposed to increase that by around 45%, without any discount currently offered removed. I'd like the committee to note, though, that the high hedge applications that we get are quite low, very small. I think maybe only 1 or 2 a year over the last couple of years, so that is a very small number. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Steptoe.
Thank you, Chair. Depending on the answer, I may have a slight amendment to the recommendation. Can you advise whether there is any concessions for if a small charity wanted to put in an application or a non-profit organisation, are there any concessions in place to assist them, particularly on pre-application issues?
Some charities, through Chair, some charities may qualify for zero application fee. The pre-application fees are discretionary, so I think on a case-by-case basis, the authority, the local planning authority, could say they would waive a fee in any particular circumstance. But these fees in front of you are for the regular developers, average householders. But in answer to your question, there can be discretionary, no payment required.
So just for clarification, Chairman, that's already in place as it stands now.
For full applications, for planning applications, some charities do qualify for zero fees. These are discretionary fees that you have in front of you. So there can be cases where a zero pre-application fee could be applied.
Thank you, Chairman.
Any other questions? Thank you, members. I move the recommendation set out on page 8.1 of the report. R1, agree to proposed charges for the 2025-2026 as attached in appendix to this report, subject to the annual budget setting process. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Eaves. All those in favour, please by show of hands. That is unanimous. That concludes our business of this evening. Thank you for your attendance. Meeting ended at 22.03.